Hello, WiCCD members. My name is Neha Chugh, and I am WiCCD's Education Committee Director. I'm happy to introduce our series, Finding Your Niche. In this series, we will interview female criminal defense lawyers who practice in a specific area within criminal law. The goal of our series is to highlight the work and accomplishments of female criminal defense lawyers, but it is also a way for us to introduce you to specialty areas within criminal law. We hope we can help you find your niche. Enjoy the series.
Neha Chugh, how are you?
I'm so great, Maya. How are you?
I'm great too. Well, very happy to see you. It's always nice to see you with your amazing smile, your energy, your fun personality.
Oh my
So I'm
goodness.
very happy.
The pot calling the kettle black, coming from you with your amazing smile and your amazing energy.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thanks for
It's very
having me.
nice.
Thank
It's
you for
very
asking
nice.
me to do this.
I'm happy that you're taking the time. I know we're recording this on a weekend. You have lots of responsibilities for work and at home. So I really appreciate the time, Neha. So I don't want to take too much of your time. So let's go straight into
Okay,
it. So if you
dive
can
into
maybe, yes, if you can start by telling us maybe a bit about your practice. Where is it
it.
located and what do you do?
Okay, so this is something that you and I have in common, which is
Mhm.
Cornwall, Ontario. So for the viewing audience who doesn't know this, Maya Shikari actually articled in Cornwall, but she was so busy that I never actually got to see her when she was there. I work in Cornwall, so never in a million years did I think that I was going to have a law practice in Cornwall, Ontario. I grew up in Guelph, which is about an hour west of Toronto. I went to school at Osgoode Hall. So I finished my schooling in Southwestern Ontario, and then I went to Osgoode Hall Law School. Um, when I finished law school, I was married. During my articles in Toronto, I was pregnant, and my husband's career took us to Eastern Ontario. So he is an academic. We came out to Ottawa for him to do his postdoc at Carleton. Um, I did the first 2 years of my practice there with an amazing group of lawyers. We almost exclusively did impaired driving offenses. Um, and then after that, my husband got a job offer even further east. And that's what took me to a place called Cornwall. And before moving to Eastern Ontario, I had never heard of Cornwall, Ontario. I had never thought of my practice ever being there. If you told me as a young law student in Toronto that my practice would one day be in a place called Cornwall, I would have laughed at you. Um, and then in Cornwall, I was able to set down roots. So by the time we got out to Cornwall, we had baby number 2. We set down roots, and it was hard. It was hard. I was, I think, one of the only women of color, other than now Senator Bernadette Clement, who was the director of the legal clinic, but the only woman of color in criminal defense. Um, one of the only women who was practicing exclusively criminal defense. And honestly, there was no red carpet. There was no one holding the door open for me saying, "Welcome to Cornwall." It was a very competitive environment. There was a couple lawyers who had a very strong a stronghold on the practice there and were very possessive of their files. And so every file that came in my door was a file, or I don't even want to call it a file. It was a client who got my love and attention and my focus and all of my energy at that time. And so, because I was just so grateful for the experience and the work, and yeah, and then from there, when I was able to give one file a lot of attention, and clients saw me working hard for them, I just through word of mouth was able to build my practice.
Okay.
Slowly. Sorry, I'll let you rein me in with questions.
Yeah, no, it's just because maybe time-wise, like when was that in
Sure.
around which years was that in?
Yeah, this was around year 3, 4 of my practice. So the first 2 years were spent, out in Ottawa with a firm. So I had the mentorship. And then because I didn't really have a firm to join, I had to kind of do it on my own. And so this was year 3, 4 of my practice. 2014, May 1st,
Okay.
2014 is when I officially opened up Chugh Law, but I was setting down the roots of it when baby number 2 was born. I just didn't have anything official on paper.
So that was around the same time that I was articling at the Crown Office in Cornwall. And having been there, I mean, I know that Cornwall, especially compared, let's say, I mean, especially, I think now Cornwall is different than how it was in 2013 or 2014. But it's a smaller jurisdiction. And I mean, I know that it isn't as diverse necessarily in terms of its population as other bigger cities like Montreal or Toronto.
Yeah.
So it's especially hard. And there aren't too many female lawyers, at least back then. I don't know if it changed now, but the local defense lawyers were mostly males. So like how were you able to break through? You know, like it's not an easy environment to start as a female lawyer, a
Yeah.
woman of color in this very small jurisdiction. So what are some of the tricks that you had other than giving your unconditional love and attention to each and every file?
Listen, I wish I could call them tricks, but I think I would call it, getting into my car at the end of a really tough day and just being alone in my car for half an hour or 45 minutes before I could speak to anyone. Just, letting myself feel my feelings, holding it in so much in court and seeing the misogyny or the mistreatment of women, me being that woman, or being, mansplained an issue that I know inside and out. Uh, and then having to just sit in my, sometimes on the 401, just, screaming along to music or, just letting it all out. But it really, I had one thing going for me, and that was necessity. I had no other job prospect. That was my job. I fell in love
There
with
was
being a
no
criminal
plan
defense
B.
lawyer.
There was no
There
plan
was
B,
no
right?
plan B. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I fell in love with being a criminal defense lawyer
Yeah.
early on. I knew that was my career path. And so this is where life brought me. Plan B was not working. And so,
Yeah.
which is not having a job. And so, and I always say to my spouse, I always say, like, I'm literally not trained to do anything else. I have no other marketable skills. And so this is it. So it's either I just show up one more day, and no matter how bad the day goes, I have to show up tomorrow. And so, yeah, it was a plan out of necessity.
Well, and you're doing very well right now. I mean, everyone can see that, and we're all very proud of you, Neha. But
Thank you.
can you maybe tell us a bit of some of the difficulties that you encountered at the beginning of your career, especially?
Yeah, I think that the hardest thing for me was um, typically more experienced men in the practice of law, any practice, family law, criminal law, basically calling me up and saying, this is what you should be doing. This is how it should be done. Trying to kind of pigeonhole me into practicing the way that they wanted me to practice. I had one man tell me that I smile too much, and how come how can you smile
If
too
you
much?
don't
And then,
smile, you get criticized for not
I
smiling.
know.
And
You
if
get
you
told to
smile,
smile. I know. I know.
too
And of
much.
course, what did I do? I kept, he said, why do you smile so much? And I kept smiling. And then I kept smiling until I eventually burst into tears because I didn't know what else to do. It was one extreme or the other, right? And so I don't know if that was a tactic in his strategy or what it was, but um, it was it was very, very, very frustrating and difficult at the time. I've had men tell me that I'm not to speak without their permission. I've had men reminding me of my place, I've been told. And so I think for me, it's been just showing up the next day and reminding the bar that I'm there, but also not forgetting what I love to do. And during those difficult times, remembering that I love to serve the community. And so, finding other ways of finding joy. So, for example, if I'm feeling frustrated with the bar, I find joy with community service and sitting on boards and volunteering with my time in the community. And that really gets me out of the rut that sometimes, the frustrations of practice can bring.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's very important actually to be mindful of
Yeah,
these things that you can do for your own well-being and mental health.
yeah, absolutely.
And I also wanted to ask you, Neha, so one of the things that really sets you apart is that you are very present on social media, and you have a very popular following, and your tweets especially are hilarious. You're very open about, like how your days at work are going, and you even sometimes share with us what happens with you at home in a very funny and like it's like people enjoy reading that. So how did you use social media to your advantage, because it's one of the tools that you're very successful in using?
Yeah.
So maybe you can tell us about that. Like, is it intentional? How did that happen?
Well, I think that Twitter is the one that I use. I've just started to step into LinkedIn, but I'm dipping my toe into that
It's
water.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, and my office runs my Facebook account mainly to keep in touch with clients, but
Yeah,
we have a Facebook account too. But Twitter, I think over the pandemic was a really interesting way of creating community during a
that's
time
true.
when we were all so isolated. And
Yeah.
so it really was like little windows into everybody's life, right? And to different people's lives in the legal community. And if you step away from the, fighting online, never ever fight online. If you step away from the uh, bad mouthing
Negativity.
lawyers,
Yeah.
negativity, and you really take a lighthearted approach, you're showing, I think it shows access to justice and access to lawyers in a different way. We are humans, we are approachable, we are family people, we are people who struggle with work-life balance. We are people who are challenged by our children on our daily basis. I'm challenged by my three kids
Yeah.
all day long. And we're people who make mistakes at work. I know that I tweeted the other day about sending my client a text about a diaper blowout that my son had rather than sending it to my husband. And, it really humanizes the profession rather than making us seem cold and standoffish. There's people take different approaches with their social media. Some people like to have a very professional, stern, I'm going to get into court and fight for you kind of approach. That's not the kind of lawyer that I am. I am a fierce advocate. I do give everyone their day in court. However, I also approach my practice with love. I approach my solicitor-client relationships with kindness. I go into court with civility and professionalism. And I think that social media can be a place where you can create community.
That's true. But also, so on this point that you approach everything with love, which is something that I also love, like, and I totally agree with that. It could be hard sometimes in this profession, right? Because there are a lot of negative people. The environment is negative itself, right? Like, it's litigation. We're just constantly struggling and fighting with the other side. But how can you maintain that? How can you maintain that positive attitude and not be affected by some of the negativity that's going on?
Oh my goodness. If I said that I wasn't affected by the negativity, I would be giving you a dishonest answer. So I
Okay.
think that what I have done, and this was a recommendation by my law partner, was that I just remove myself from negative situations. So I have been in situations where, I've been typical opposing counsel situation, or someone wants to confront you with something, they take you into an interview room at the courthouse, shut the door behind them, and start just kind of blasting you. And my law partner's attitude towards that is always, why did you stay in that conversation? Why did you continue that conversation?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've taken that approach now where, I have resigned from positions where I have not been treated with respect, or I have left conversations and returned to them later where things are getting heated to the point of being unprofessional or being, personal attacks. And I think that I think that for me, that has been able to keep me balanced. I've had situations in court recently where I have found myself unraveling a little bit. And then what I have to do is I have to take the night and I have to come back to court the next day. I've let the court know, I'm sorry. The way that I behaved yesterday was not myself. I'm sorry. Can we get back on track? And it builds so much credibility with the court, with opposing counsel, who's often the crown, and it helps to really just get things back on the rails. So to say that I do everything perfectly and approach everything with love every single day, I think is not true. But I think that as women, I think it's okay to leave a situation. I think it's okay, and we counsel people to leave all the time, right? Don't breach your conditions. Don't return her call. Don't return his call, right? We counsel people to leave all the time. So why don't we do it for ourselves?
That's true. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to ask you, Neha, so because I mean, what's very nice to see right now is that there are more and more female lawyers that are new in criminal defense, and many of them are diverse, and many of them would like to one day start a practice and be just as successful as you are. So what advice do you have for lawyers in general, and in particular for those who come from an ethnic background who may feel, like that they have a bit more challenges to overcome just because, like sometimes they have an accent and they feel uncomfortable. They don't want people to judge them because of the accent or the way they look. So what advice do you have?
My biggest piece of advice is that success is not a straight line, and it's not a straight line to the top. So my trajectory has been, I'm going to say, a roller coaster, right? Mostly trending towards something positive, but I've had a lot of downs, and with every down comes a return up. And I suggest, my biggest suggestion is just to wake up the next morning and just keep going. And I want to add to that is a big expectation of us, of you, of all women, especially women of color. We are in an unprecedented time right now where systemic issues are really in our face, right? So equity, equity, diversity, and inclusion are issues that are so much at the forefront, and we are asking young lawyers of color to be at the front lines with these issues. And we're telling them, if you show up to work, then you're helping us meet our EDI quotients. But we have not changed the systemic issues that are so prevalent. That lawyer who has an accent, or that lawyer, who's the only woman of color in her small town who feels ostracized or feels left out. We have not changed the systemic issues, but we're telling, young lawyers of color to keep showing up every single day, especially women of color. My suggestion is just keep going. It's going to be so hard. There's going to be days when you want to quit, but just keep going. My second suggestion is define what success is for yourself. Don't let anyone else define it. Just really set your own parameters. When I started out, I wanted to have a practice that I could balance with kids, and I wanted to have a practice that I could, set my own schedule, where I could decide what clients I wanted. Of course, as my practice expanded, that all went out the window. But my definition of success was, I determined what salary I needed to make in order to have a comfortable lifestyle. I knew then how many clients I needed to bring in, and I knew how much I needed to work, how many billable hours I needed to work, how many block fees I needed to do. I knew how many days per month I needed to be in court. I had kind of a number in my head, so I was able to define success for myself. And those other lawyers who were feeling possessive about their practices had no idea what my definition of success was for myself. So if anyone else was getting spun into knots about what my definition of success was, or what they thought that I was doing, it was their own problem, and I was able to focus on myself.
Right. So, and it's you have a very very strong sense of self, right? Like, you know
Right.
who you are, what you want to be. And that's, I think, very important
Yeah.
when you want to work on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard being a sole practitioner.
It
Like,
is. It's
you
very
have to
hard.
know who you are.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. Neha, I can talk to you for hours. You're so much fun. Like, you're a very pleasant person to talk to. It's like, it feels
Oh,
like
thank
it's
you.
only been like a minute or two.
All right.
I-
Is it longer?
yeah. So I want to really thank you for taking the time, especially out of your very busy weekend, and right after a jury trial. So thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
doing this. Thank you for your
Thank you,
time.
Maya. Thank you, Maya.
You're welcome.